All right, assalamu alaikum. We have another episode of the Mr. Islam Answers Back show. This one is going to be not, it won't be too long, but we have another case of Annie Cyrus being dishonest again. All right, another case of Annie Cyrus being dishonest again and lying. So we're going to expose her claim here. Here, she makes a claim about Surah 8, verse 60, that supposedly the verse is telling Muslims to you know commit acts of terror, and she tries to get ahead of herself because obviously she's aware that the next verse clearly says that if the enemy inclined to peace, that that the Muslims should also incline to peace also. So she tries to get ahead of herself by saying that, oh well, yeah, the verse, it said it doesn't mean peace, it means that you have to be in subjugation or whatever. But we're going to expose that and show you that she's a liar, and we're going to yet again show people that you should not, that these ex-Muslims, these so-called ex-Muslims, just because if they really were Muslims, just because they're ex-Muslims does not mean they know anything about Islam. So giving them platforms or inviting them to speak as if they are, as if they were scholars in Islam, is just a mistake on your part. You know what I mean? For those who invite her out or invite these people out, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know about Islam. They're uneducated about Islam. They don't know it. And we're going to show you, as I've already showed you already. I've already demonstrated plenty of time that many of that, Annie and some of these other ex-Muslims. Remember the one I did with that other guy? I forgot his name. But the one I did a while back with another guy claiming to be an ex-Muslim, just to show you that they're ignorant. Either they're ignorant or they're lying. It's either one or the other. Either they're completely ignorant about Islam, which means you shouldn't invite them anyway. They're not experts on Islam, or they're lying just because they want to satisfy their bigoted audience that I've talked about before. And a lot of stuff they say is just to placate, in particular, their white bigot audience. Let's be honest with it, right? Some of the stuff that they say is just to placate their white bigot audience. So they want to say these outrageous things about Muslims. They want to say racist things about Arabs or racist, bigoted things about Muslims because they are playing to the racism, the white racist bigot crowd that they want to satisfy. Okay, so it's one or the other, either ignorance, complete ignorance, or they are telling bold-faced lies. Okay, and like I said, I don't like to give these people the benefit of the doubt, so we say that they're straight up liars. Since she claims she's an ex-Muslim, and that's the agenda that she runs on, that supposedly she was an ex-Muslim and therefore you should listen to her. Well, then I'm going to say that she's not ignorant. I'm going to say that she's a liar. Okay, because she could have, and we'll show you, she could have easily, I mean, first of all, the verse itself is self-explanatory, but she could have then went and looked at a tafsir to see, right? And we're going to expose that. Wa alaikum salam to the brother or sister in chat. Before I begin, don't forget to like the video. If you have not subscribed to our channel, subscribe, become a subscriber. Hit that notification bell so that way whenever we do a video, you will be notified. All right. Don't forget that we are on a quest to get 10 Patreon supporters. We are up to 6 so far. We are up to 6 so far. Right. So we want to get a goal. We want to reach a goal of 10 Patreon supporters. Remember, as I always say, those who are attacking Islam with their racism and their bigotry have hundreds of supporters who support them and support their content, which allows them to make videos, some of them on a daily basis, sometimes twice a day, right? So in order for us to counter, we need your support as well, so that way we can have the availability to do the same thing and expand our platform just the same. Abdi, welcome. Abdi, welcome. Okay, so again, remember to check out our Patreon and become a Patreon supporter, so that way we can match or outdo those people who are spreading hate against Islam and Muslims. As I told you, David Wood has about 800 and something patrons. Apostate Prophet has about 490 something. Right? I'm asking for 10. I got 6 right now. I need 4 more people so we can get 10, and then inshallah we'll go from there. But without further ado, let's get to it. So let's get to Annie's lie. Okay, she has this segment that she calls Annie time of the day. All right, where she makes a little short video with some kind of lie against Islam, and we're going to expose that lie. All right, so let's take a look at it. So that's why I titled it Annie's lie of the day rather than Annie's time of the day. Today we're going to call it Annie's lie of the day. Okay, so let's take a look at it. As you can see here on the screen, right? As you can see here on the screen, Annie made this little thing here. Let's read the tweet. It says, Quran chapter 8 verse 60. Terrify Allah's enemy by steeds of war. The next verse is not peace. Instead, it means that when non-Muslims submit to the Islamic force, only then should Muslims stop the terror of Islamic war. She's wrong. She's lying. They love to play on that word too, because some translations use the word terror. But in actuality, the word means to to intimidate. It has nothing to do with any physical act. It actually means to have a show of power, so that way you can intimidate, right? You can intimidate your enemies from attacking you. And we'll explain that. We'll get into that. We'll get into all of that. In fact, if you look and see, I actually responded. I was one of the first people to respond to her. Right there, as you see right there, right? I said, wrong again, Annie. 860 is saying arm yourselves and have a show of force so your enemies think 2 and 3 times before they think to attack you. Like how the USA has more than 1,000 nukes to intimidate any would-be enemies. And the next verse is peace, just peace. So as you can see, I had already responded to her right there. So I've been waiting to make this video, so finally, alhamdulillah, I got a little extra time. But let's get into it. Let's go ahead and listen to her claim, and we'll expose Annie's lie of the day. Here we go.
Annie's time of the day. Terrifying, terrorizing, committing jihad again. Let's quickly go to Quran chapter 8 verse 60. And prepare against them whatever you're able of power and of steed wars, by which you may terrify the enemy of Allah and your enemy and those besides them whom you don't know, but whom Allah knows. And whatever you spend in the cause of Allah will be fully repaid to you, and you will not be wronged. And yes, before you all go crazy, if you read the verse after, it does say, but if they seek peace, then let them be. But let me tell you this, first of all, yet another verse of enemy of Allah, and we all know enemy of Allah equals those who are not Muslim. How many more kill them, fight them verses do you need to realize Islam is not a religion, it's a cult, it's you're with me or you're my enemy type of attitude. And when it says if they seek peace, it's when they either convert to Islam or become dhimmis as second-class citizens. So hold your horses before you all go on cherry-picking Quran.
Okay, Annie. So no, Annie, sorry, you're wrong. You're ignorant. You're a liar. Okay. First of all, since you are supposedly an ex-Muslim, you should have known that these verses are not talking about people who are just non-Muslims, just being non-Muslims. These verses in chapter 8 are dealing with the people who had been attacking and persecuting the Muslims, right? So this is not referring to any non-Muslims or just enemies of Allah, because again, there are other verses that talk about how, for example, in Surah 60 verse 8 and 9, how there's a distinction between those who are trying to attack the Muslims and drive them from their homes, and as opposed to those who are not trying to do that Allah says to be at peace with those people and treat them with kindness and fairness. So your claim that any non-Muslims are enemies to Allah is a complete lie, Miss ex-Muslim. You should know better than that, since you're an ex-Muslim. I thought you're the expert. I thought you were the expert non-Muslim who knows about Islam, since you used to be a Muslim, and all these haters should listen to you as you lie to them. Well, she's lying to you guys, because again, chapter 60, verse 8 refutes her claim. Let's take a look at it. Let me go to 60, verse 8. All right, let's go to 60, verse 8, so we can refute her claim that, anybody who's a non-Muslim is an enemy of Allah. Okay, let's expose that lie right there. And what's interesting about this is, if you ever forget, all you got to do is reverse it, right? Right now we're dealing with 8 verse 60, right? Just reverse the numbers to 60 verse 8, and you'll see it deals with the people who are enemies and who are not enemies. Look, so here's the claim that she's refuted here. Let's take a look. Are all non-Muslims enemies? No, they're not. Let's take a look. Look here. Right? This is Surah 60 verse 8. Right? Like I said, we're dealing with 8 verse 60. Right? That's the verse she's claiming. But all you got to do is reverse the numbers, interestingly. And we see that it deals with similar subject matter. But look what it says here. It says that Allah does not forbid you respecting those who have not made war against you on account of your religion, and have not driven you forth from your homes, that you should show them kindness and deal with them justly, for surely Allah loves the doers of justice, Miss Annie. So this proves that all non-Muslims are not enemies of Allah or Muslims, as this verse clearly shows us. That as long as those people are not trying to fight us, right, because of our beliefs, they're not trying to drive us out of our homes or drive us out of our lands, Allah says, deal kindly and justly with those people, for Allah loves the doers of justice, Annie. But you should have known this since you were an ex-Muslim, right? Again, that's your claim, right? That's your claim to fame. You're an ex-Muslim, therefore you know about Islam, and you supposedly know how bad it is and how evil it is and all of that. So therefore, these people who invite you to speak at their colleges and universities and churches and political organizations, they should listen to you, right? Because you supposedly know what you're talking about, what you don't know what you're talking about. But that's your claim to fame, is to pretend to give these people the image that, oh, look, I'm an ex-Muslim, so you should listen to me because I know what I'm talking about, when in fact you really don't know what you're talking about. So I want this to be taken note of for her followers, right? And anybody who decides to invite her or who has invited her, she's misinforming you. All non-Muslims are not enemies to Allah or Muslims, as this verse clearly shows. Those who are peaceful with us, we're peace with you. You're not considered an enemy of Allah or the Muslims. Annie has lied to you. Let's look at the next verse to further clarify the position. Right? The next verse says, chapter 60, verse 9, it says, Allah only forbids you respecting those who made war upon you on account of your religion, and drove you forth from your homes, and backed up others in your expulsion, that you make friends with them. And Allah, and whoever makes friends with them, those are the unjust. See that? That's fair, right? Those who are at peace with us and not trying to drive us out of our lands or our homes, be kind and just with them. However, those who are trying to attack us and persecute because of our faith, and those who are trying to drive us from our lands and our homes, those are the people that Allah says, no, don't make friends with those people. See? And isn't that human nature? Isn't that normal? Right? Isn't that normal? Isn't that a universal understanding? Most people would understand that as a universal concept. Right? That, of course, be at peace with those who are peaceful with you, and those who are trying to hurt you or harm you or drive you from your lands or invade your country or whatever. Clearly, obviously, don't make friends with them. That's universal. That's a universal concept. Correct? Even with animals, universal concept. You leave the animal alone, the animal leaves you alone. You try to mess with the animal's home or its nest or its resting place, and the animal might bite you or scratch you or stick you with his pin or spit poison at you or spray you, right? Something. That's a universal concept. Leave them alone, they leave you alone. You bother them, you might find yourself getting bothered back. So I'm sorry, Annie. I'm sorry, not sorry. You're a liar and you're misinforming the people. Okay? Now, let's get back to the verse of the discussion, which is Surah 8, verse 60. Okay? Surah 8, verse 60. Let's get back to the verse in question. All right? So as we see here, what do we see here? It says, and prepare again, and you can see from the different translations that, you see, they like to, of course, they love it because some translations put the word terror, right? So they get happy about that because they can play that into their modern day, terrorism claim. But in reality, if you look at all the translations, right? In reality, if you look at all the translations, you see that, terror is not really, it's not talking about terrorism or acts of terror. It's talking about the idea of intimidating or making your enemy fearful of attacking you. So, as you can see from the different translations, right? For example, look at Muhammad Assad's translation right at the top. It says, hence, make ready against them whatever force and war mounts you are able to muster, so that you might deter thereby the enemies of God, who are your enemies as well, and others besides them, of whom you may be unaware. Okay? So there you go. So it's a deterrence. Have a show of force. That's what it says. Whatever force. Make ready. Have it ready. Right? Have it ready so that way your enemy sees it, and that perhaps might deter them from wanting to attack you. Okay? Here's another. Look at Pickthall. Make ready for them all thou canst of armed force and of horses tethered, that ye may dismay the enemy of Allah and your enemy. Okay? Now Yusuf Ali he chose to strike terror, right? But notice he puts in parentheses into the hearts. So even Yusuf Ali is making it clear that it doesn't mean acts of terror, right? Of course, when Yusuf Ali made this translation, the concept wasn't even really, that the idea of the big terrorism thing wasn't going on. But notice he's still back. Look, it says 1985. He still put into the hearts, and even the 1938, which is the original translation, as you see right here, right? You see the two. They got the 1985 translation and the 1938. So even back in 1938, Yusuf Ali put in parentheses into the hearts. And of course, back in 1938, there definitely wasn't any idea of so-called Muslim terrorism going on around the world or anything like that. But yet, so here he used the word strike terror, but he puts into the hearts, because that's the understanding. That in other words, this is to strike fear into your heart. This has nothing to do with any acts of terrorism. It just means to make the person fearful in their heart. Make the enemies fearful in their heart. So that way, as the others have said, to deter them, to dismay them, to get them to think twice about attacking you. Okay? So look at Shakir. And prepare against them what force you can, and horses tied at the frontier, to frighten thereby the enemy of Allah. Okay? Wahiduddin, Wahiduddin, he has which you can overawe them. Dr. Layla has to put fear in the enemy. Okay, so it's clear that it doesn't mean any act of terror, as you can see from the translation. Even Yusuf Ali, who used the word terror, he made sure to put, and again, this was before the idea of Islamic terrorism that we hear in the modern world today. So this is clear. Even in 1938, he put in parentheses into the heart, so that way it was understood that this was something, an emotional thing. You want them to emotionally feel fear or intimidated to attack you. And again, this is a universal concept, everyone, right? Just like I said in tweet, in response to her when I tweeted, I said, hey, Annie, it's the same thing like the United States has done, right? The United States made sure that they prepared for them a big army, right? They got a big army, they got a big navy, they have over 1,000 nuclear weapons, and they make sure people know that. Why? So that you think twice about trying to attack the United States. So that's why they make sure that their navy is big. They got big battleships with guns pointing and everything. They got tanks. So that way, that's why sometimes they'll just send their ships to stand out by your country in the Gulf, right? Don't they do that? They have their ships out in the Gulf, out there in the Middle Eastern Gulf, right? Why do they do that? So that way, any of those countries will think twice. They say, "Look, look at it. We're right off the coast of your country, and look at all the ships we got. Look at all the battleships and aircraft carriers we got. Look at us. Think twice before you mess with us, right? They got so many nuclear weapons. Why do they have so many? To let you think twice. You better think twice before you attack the United States, right? Saying, and then you could look at it in reverse. Why doesn't the U.S. attack China, right? Even though the United States is a powerful country, but why when it comes to China, they want to negotiate? Why don't they just run weapons and try to attack China? Because China has a show of force. China has one of the biggest armies, and China has weapons and nukes and all of that too. So America, although it's very powerful, they have to think twice. They have to think twice about attacking China. But notice, little countries, they run right over you. Iraq, they run right over you, right? They don't care. They'll attack you because they'll run right over you because they know that you don't have the power to stand up to them. But countries that are a formidable foe, who has a show of force, they think twice. North Korea, again, notice North Korea is talk. There's talk of North Korea, but notice North Korea does nuclear bomb tests, missiles tests, and all of that. And what does America do? We do nothing, right? America doesn't do anything. They don't send no troops to North Korea. They don't get ready to go to war with North Korea. Instead, they want to negotiate. They want to talk. Why? Because North Korea is dismaying their enemies, right? They are frightening their enemies. So their enemy, although their enemy may be powerful, the enemy's like, you know what, we got to think twice before we mess with North Korea. So let's talk to North Korea. Let's negotiate with China. But if you're weak and small, they run right over you. So Annie, America is following this verse. Most countries are following this verse, even though they're not Muslims. Ain't that something, Annie? Right? Most countries are following with this verse themselves, even though they're not Muslims, right? Even though they may not believe in Allah, but they're still following Allah's command. They're preparing steeds of war, right? They're preparing weapons, and they got steeds of war, whether the steeds of war is the tank, the battleship, the fighter jets that they have. That's the modern steeds of war. And they all have that. Why? To do what? To dismay their enemies, to put fear in the hearts of their enemies. Annie, so your claim is just completely bogus. And why should the Muslims be left out? Should not the Muslims have the right to do the same thing, to build up their forces, so that way they can dismay and prevent or deter any enemies from attacking them, Annie? So this right here is again another universal concept that can be applicable for all time periods, whether it was the Muslims back at that time to modern day times and into the future. Okay, now let's take a look at the next verse. The next verse, like I said, you heard her. She got ahead of herself, and she was aware that people were going to call her out. So she tried to spin it, right? She tried to spin it and say, oh yeah, it says peace, but it doesn't really mean peace. Well, we're going to refute that. But let's take a look at the verse. Let's just read it on its own. What does it say? What does the verse say? Let's just read it without any explanation. Let's see if the verse is self-explanatory. All right, let's read the verse on its own. The verse on its own says, but if they incline to peace, incline thou to it as well, and place thy trust in God, or Allah. Verily, He alone is all hearing, all knowing. So notice the verse without any explanation, it's clear. It doesn't say, oh, if they incline to peace by accepting Islam. It doesn't say if they incline to peace by submitting to Sharia law. It doesn't say if they incline to peace by believing that Allah is God and Muhammad. No, it doesn't say any of that, Annie. The verse speaks for itself. It says if they incline to peace. It just peace. It doesn't give any conditions. It just says peace, plain and simple. It says then incline you also to it and trust in Allah. Lo, He even is the hearer of the knower. So based on the verse just speaking for itself with no commentary, no interpretation, just letting it speak for itself, you notice the verse doesn't offer any stipulations or conditions. It just says if they incline to peace, you should incline to peace also. So based on that, Annie, you're wrong. But how about we see if that's how the Muslim scholars understood it? How about that? How about we check? Well, let's do that, everybody. Let's see. We go to Tafsir Ibn Kathir, right? You guys say that Ibn Kathir is the best one and all that, right? Okay, well, good. I'm glad you say that. Well, let's see what he says. He says the command to facilitate peace when the enemy seeks a peaceful resolution. It says, Allah says, if you fear betrayal from a clan of people, then sever the peace treaty with them so that you both are on equal terms If they continue being hostile and opposing you, then fight them. So this is the proof then that the people, that it had nothing to do, that they haven't, that it doesn't stipulate that they have to submit to the Muslim forces, as here it shows you, right? This says if you fear, so in other words, obviously the context shows that it's understood that the people that they might fear betrayal from, obviously they have not accepted Islam. They have not accepted Islam. They have not agreed to submit to the Islamic rule of the winning side of the Muslims or not. They're just on their side and have a peace treaty. But if they, obviously it says that if they fear that the other people might betray them, then sever the peace treaty so that what? So that you're both on equal terms. If they continue being hostile and opposing you, then you fight them. Okay? It goes on to say, but if they incline and seek to peace, if they resort to reconciliation and seek a treaty of non-hostility. So there you go, Annie. Obviously, it has nothing to do with what you claim that, oh, they have to submit to the Muslim forces, they have to submit to Islam. Nope. It just says, right, as you see, Ibn Kathir is telling us that to peace, if they resort to reconciliation and seek a treaty of non-hostility, you also incline to it and accept offers of peace from them. No, so notice, they're offering the peace to you. So that means it's not based on the stipulation from the Muslims. In other words, it's not saying that the Muslims are telling them, okay, you want peace? All right, we need you to submit. We need you to submit to our power. No, it says you accept the offer of peace from them. They're offering you the peace. You see? It says this is why when the pagans inclined to peace in the year of Hudaybiyah and sought cessation of hostilities for 9 years between them and the Messenger of Allah, he accepted this from them, as well as accepting other terms of peace they brought forth. So in other words, they are the ones who brought their peaceful terms, and the Messenger of Allah accepted it, it says. So sorry, Annie, ignorant, you're lying, you're wrong. You're lying, you're ignorant, and you're wrong. But again, you guys invite her like she knows. This is what I'm telling you guys. Look, even if you hate Islam or you oppose Islam or whatever, at least stop inviting these ignorant people to speak to your audience, or speak to your college, or speak to your church, or speak to your political organizations. They are ignorant and they are misinforming you. They're lying to you. She clearly doesn't know what she's talking about. Or as I said, she's clearly lying just to make it sound good. She's feeding into your hatred. She's feeding into your bigotry with this misinformation by telling you, oh yeah, it doesn't mean peace. It doesn't mean peace. It means that, the Muslims are ruling over you. No, it doesn't. As you can see here. You can see here, it doesn't mean what she claimed. It means that they offered peace, and look, it even says the Prophet Muhammad, he accepted the peace from offered terms that they brought to him. He accepted their terms. He didn't say, okay, if you want peace, well then do what I say. No, he accepted the peace terms that they offered. So Annie is wrong that it doesn't mean really. It means real peace. It means two sides that want a peaceful reconciliation without either side having to, put itself in a disadvantageous position. So sorry, Annie, you're wrong. You are wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. It says here that he accepted this from them, as well as accepting other terms of peace they brought forth. Abdullah bin al-Imam Ahmed recorded that Ali ibn Abi Talib said that the Messenger of Allah said, there will be disputes after me. So if you have a way to end them in peace, then do so. Notice, he leaves it open. He doesn't say, well, they got to submit to our power. Make them submit to you. Make them bow down to you. Make them kiss your feet. Make them accept Sharia law. Make them declare there's no God. No, he says, no, find a way. Look how he left it. So if you have a way to end them, then do so. He left it open. It says, and trust in Allah. Allah says, conduct a peace treaty with those who incline to peace, and trust in Allah. So this proves then further that it has nothing to do with them accepting Islam. It's just saying, look, that's why you got to put your trust in Allah, because you don't know what they're going to do. You just got to accept. They want peace. Okay, let's have peace. And you put your trust in Allah. Why? Because they have not submitted to Islam. You don't know what they're going to do. It's just a peace down the middle. Okay? Verily, Allah will suffice for you and aid you, even if they resort to peace as a trick. So once again, this proves that Annie is wrong. That it doesn't mean that the peace is only when they submit to the Muslim forces. But again, you guys invite these liars to you. You invite these ignorant ex-Muslims. They have no training in Islam whatsoever, other than supposedly being an ex-Muslim. Other than supposedly being an ex-Muslim. You wouldn't do that to a Christian now, would you? Right? An ex-Christian. You wouldn't invite a layperson ex-Christian to speak to you as an expert on Christianity, would you? Right? You would be like, well, you were just a Christian. You weren't knowledgeable. Right? You wouldn't do that. So why do you invite these people, these regular so-called ex-Muslims? I mean, damn, they weren't even training to be people of knowledge. You know what I mean? They were just, if they were even really ex-Muslims, but they weren't even, it wasn't like they were people who were going to, the Islamic universities to learn how to be scholars or imams or anything like that, right? No, these were just regular lay people Muslims, supposedly, who ex-Muslims, and you guys invite them as if because of the fact that they were ex-Muslim, this somehow means that they're knowledgeable people about Islam. And as you can see, as I have been exposing, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about, or they're blatantly lying to you. So there it says here, it says, Allah will suffice you and aid you even if they resort to peace as a trick, so that they gather and reorganize their forces. So it's clear that the understanding is not that they have to submit to Islam or the Islamic forces, because obviously if that were the case, they wouldn't be able, it wouldn't be considered as a trick, and they definitely wouldn't be able to reorganize their forces if peace meant that they had to submit to Muslim rulership. Clearly this means that they are still independent. That's why you have to put your trust in Allah, because of the fact that this peace treaty means that both sides remain independent but are agreeing to be at peace. And so Allah says, just in case this is a trick, don't worry about it. Trust in Allah. So Annie, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. You just don't know what you're talking about, Annie. All right? Clearly don't know what you're talking about. You've been exposed. You've been refuted, Annie, yet again. Yet again, Annie, Cyrus has been refuted. Okay. Wa alaikum salam to I am a mu'min. Bird Nest Rat Fest. Wa alaikum salam. Welcome. Brother Muhammad Zakaria, welcome. Appreciate you guys checking out. So that's pretty much it, right? That's pretty much it. Her claim has been refuted about Surah 8, verse 60. It doesn't mean to, it does not mean to do any acts of terror. It just means to prepare your forces. Make sure you have a strong military to show, so that way your enemy can see it and they think twice and 3 times about attacking you before they attack you. Just like I said, just like I gave the example of the United States or China or any country that builds a military and has a show of force. Why do they do that? So that way you better think twice before you attack. Matter of fact, we even as individuals, we do that, right? Sometimes as men, we like to lift weights so we can get our muscles to look bigger. Why? So that people think twice about messing with you. Because they like, wow, look at his muscles, man. This guy, he's muscle bound. Look at his arms, right? Look at his arms. Look at his body. He's muscular. He's a big muscular guy. You think twice before you mess with them, right? Or sometimes in our country, United States, people can have guns. So you might walk around with your gun on your hip so people can see it. So again, why? They think twice about trying to rob you or attack you or start a fight with you. Why? Because they see that you got something to intimidate your enemies. So whether you do it by lifting weights to get big muscles so people think not to mess with you, or you walk around with a weapon on your hip or your back so people can see that you got a gun or a stick or a sword or whatever, it makes people think twice. Okay? And that's what the verse is talking about. And then the next verse, Annie she lied about that. The next verse means peace, and it means a real peace. It does not mean that peace is only accepted if the other side is under the Muslim forces, as we just showed you from the tafsir. So Annie is a liar. She's ignorant. You people who invite her, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're just letting a person misinform you about Islam. She obviously has no training in Islamic knowledge. She's nobody. It would be like, people inviting a regular Christian who left Christianity, and now that Christian is being invited to speak about Christianity, and they have no training in Christian theology. They were just a regular Christian. They were just your regular everyday layperson Christian. No study, no nothing. And you invite them to speak about Christianity, against Christianity, like they know what they're talking about. It would be the same thing. it would be the same thing. Okay? All right, so we're going to end it on that. Don't forget to like the video. If you have not subscribed to Mr. Islam Answers Back channel, subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification button so that way whenever we do a new video, you'll be notified. And again, help us achieve our goal. Help us achieve our goal on Patreon. We are looking for 10 Patreon supporters. We have 6 right now. We need 4 more to reach our goal of 10. So if you watch this, if any of you watching now would like to help out to join the Patreon, do that. If those of you who watch the recording of this later and you would like to join, just click the link in the description of this video to join our Patreon and help support our platform so we can expand and we can grow from there. If you don't want to do that, there are other options that you can help support us. So by all means, take advantage of whichever you feel is, your best option. All right. And I'd like to thank you ahead of time for those of you who are supporting and have joined to Patreon. May Allah reward you. I appreciate that. For those who will join later and support the channel, I appreciate that too. And may Allah reward you. All right. We end with that. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.